welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 80 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 6 of The Clash of Kings, that's Jon 1.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter, and we're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully, we're going to provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We will summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll provide you some additional information, which will be particularly handy if you're not reading along. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing all right. I just realized I'm wearing nylon, workout type pants, and I hope it's not too noisy. Like the sliding of the nylon is not too noisy, so I'm trying to keep my legs still.
Compared to the creaky fart noises from my chair, we'll be okay. I promise it's my chair.
The episode, I think it's whichever episode it goes out tomorrow for us, which will be a couple weeks ago for our listeners. We were talking about off the air about how much less hair I have because of trying to remove the fart noises from your chair.
So I don't have, obviously we're still in, for listeners in the future, we're still in COVID lockdown, so not much is happening, but I do have a slightly funny story for you.
Do tell.
This very morning, my dear wife Carson was accusing me of being clumsy. Now,
impossible.
She might have a point, but I'm going to defend my honour. So,
okay.
When she made this accusation, I was walking away from her holding a cup of tea. And I turned as I walked away to protest my lack of clumsiness. And I walked straight into the door frame, spilling tea on myself.
Spill the tea down your shirt.
I am not clumsy. Oh, God. Yeah.
So you've got a point.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't too hot, I hope. It didn't scald.
No. It was being taken to throw away and be replaced.
Oh, okay. Good. That's much better than the alternative. Yeah. So last weekend, I walked into the laundry room and I flipped on the light switch. And the overhead light kind of flickered like it was getting ready to start to cause trouble. And it's one of those old school, like long halogen light type things, Yeah. And so we've been, we usually replace those, but it's in the laundry room. So I just hadn't thought about doing it. So I said to Stacy, hey, do you want me to replace the light in the laundry room? And she was like, yeah, sure. Why not? And so I took the old one down. And because those are so long, they don't tie into the light box because they just tie into the ceiling.
Okay.
Usually using drywall anchors.
Right.
So I was expecting, usually when you take those off, there's just an empty hole. There's just like a hole in the ceiling where the wire comes down. The wire
comes down, right. Okay.
Yes. And what you buy a particular type of light box kit that works in that situation. You look like you have a question already. Can
I interject? Yes. I cannot believe you would take this on when you could have just replaced the bulb.
I know. Well, yes, in hindsight, I really wish I had just replaced the bulb. But I didn't. So I took the light off, and the hole was just way too big. Like, it was like a crater in my ceiling. And I was like, oh boy, the typical what's called old construction light box kit was not going to work in this situation. So instead of just putting the old light back up,
which I would have done,
yeah.
I might have turned it just to make it look a bit different.
I now have a 16-inch by 20-inch hole in my ceiling that I've cut. I've put up a new light box, a new light box kit between the two studs, which is technically for ceiling fans, but whatever. And now I've had to buy new drywall that I've had to cut the hole perfectly into the center of the drywall. And now today I've got to go put the new drywall in, mud it up, then sand it down, then paint the ceiling, and then install the new light.
Yeah.
It's dragged on it's been at least a week because I did it last weekend.
The next time Carson asks me to do something around the house, I'm going to play her episode 80 of The Ghost of Harrenhal. That's why I don't take projects on, dear.
That's right.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
That's what I'll be doing after we finish here.
Well, I'm off for a game of tennis as soon as we finish.
Oh, hey, you know what? So am I.
Are you really?
Stacey and I are going to go. Stacey and Ethan were going to go play tennis, but Ethan is not able to go, so I will be her tennis partner for the day.
Wow.
So how about that? We're both going to go play tennis.
If you want to come down our neck of the woods, we can play doubles, and we can scrupulously avoid touching each other's balls.
I will run that past Stacey. I will run that past Stacey, but she's a rather new tennis player, so I don't know that her confidence level is up to playing actual tennis games yet. She might hold you guys back a bit, or feel like she will.
Yeah, it would just be a feeling, I'm sure. All right, well, let's get down to business. How did we leave Jon? Last time we saw Jon, he was attempting to desert from the Night's Watch, but was returned to Castle Black by his friends. Lord Mormont brusquely sympathised, but has more weighty matters. He plans to take the full force of the Night's Watch north to get to the source of the rising dead and root out this Mance Raider, the king beyond the wall. Okay, Mackelly, why don't we give them the summary of this chapter?
All right. Well, Jon finds Sam Tarley in the library of Castle Black. Tarley had been sent to find maps of the land north of the wall, and he's been gone all night and has missed breakfast. Sam's overwhelmed by the library, which to him is a treasure trove of information containing thousands of books, which Jon compares to the 100+ at Winterfell.
What on the surface looks like a terrible decision does actually make some sense. Mormont intends to keep Castle Black informed of progress via Raven, and Sam can write and knows how to handle the birds. Naturally enough, Sam is dreading the trip.
Jon tries to reassure Sam by noting that 200 men will go from Castle Black, and they'll rendezvous with another 100 from the Shadow Tower, which is a pretty formidable force versus the ragtag wildlings. But Lord Commander Mormont is waiting for the maps, so the boys head through the Worm Walks, which is a series of tunnels under Castle Black that allow for relatively comfortable transit during the worst winters. They emerge in the training yard, where the latest recruits are being pummeled into shape.
Jon stops to talk with Donald Noy, the one-armed blacksmith. They discuss the recruits. Jon gets all, "I've been here for years," by saying they smell of summer. And they also discuss the state of the world. Jon's brother Robb is the king in the north. Noy was King Robert's armourer and knows the Baratheon brothers and offers some thoughts. They don't go too far with this conversation, as old loyalties run deeper than vows, and the Night's Watch is supposed to be above such distraction.
They enter the King's Tower, where Mormont has taken up residence after his chamber burned, and find Mormont in discussion with acting First Ranger Thoren Smallwood. The latter wants command of the Great Ranging, but Mormont dresses him down and dismisses him. Mormont feels a bit aggrieved that Thornwood was suggesting the old bear was too old. He asks Sam to reassure him that he isn't, but Sam is tongue-tied in the presence of just about everyone, so Mormont kicks him out too.
The Lord Commander then gives Jon a very detailed rundown on Maester Aemon's ancestry, and Jon asks why he's telling him all this. Mormont says, "You've something in common, a king for a brother." But Jon has knuckled down and no longer intends to desert to help Robb. "We have something else in common, our vow."
Yep, he's all about the vow now.
Yeah.
Not so much a couple chapters ago, but now he's all about the vow.
Last chapter, yeah. I mean, he does blow hot and cold, Jon.
Yeah.
So Sam missed breakfast, which obviously is a bit of a surprise to all of his friends. But Jon, so some suggested that Sam had deserted, which doesn't make a certain amount of sense, given that he's about to go on this great ranging, which is pretty terrifying. I mean, like you said, 200 men from Castle Black, that's enough to deal with the ragtag wildlings. But I'm not afraid of the wildlings. I'm afraid of the dead rising. That's what I'm afraid of.
Yes.
and if Sam is too, I'm right with Sam. Nothing wrong with that. So yes, it is an opportunity where Sam might have deserted, but Jon makes the point that desertion takes a sort of courage as well, and Sam doesn't even have that. So
right, yeah, there was no way Sam would have the courage to desert and then live his life on the run. I think he'd rather do what's the easier path, which is to follow along with what he's supposed to do,
Yeah.
which is terrifying as well. Just it also won't have him on the run for the rest of his life.
But you're not bucking against the flow. You're just going with the flow, which is the easy
one
way to
step
go.
in front of the other.
Yeah. So one of the books that he's very interested in down in the library is Ranger Redwine's account of the North, which I think he said it's 1,000 years old. Did he?
He doesn't specify time, but he says it mentions King Doran Stark.
That's right.
So it's at least 300 years old because there's a king in the north.
That's right. But this account includes giants and children of the forest, both of which are mythical to the current Night's Watch.
Yes. And Sam is generally just amazed by the findings in the library. Beyond just that book with Ranger Redwine, he finds books with accounts of the language of the children of the forest and scrolls from old Valeria and ancient accounts of seasons. And I'm kind of with them. Those are some seriously valuable works right there.
Yeah, it's a strange thing because you would certainly not think of Castle Black and the Night's Watch in general as a seat of learning, but it is an abnormally stable place. Yeah. It's been there for thousands of years and has been maintained and manned and never deserted. So the accumulated wisdom is rich and deep.
Right, yeah.
But perhaps overlooked.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's got such a diverse background of people, pulls for people from all walks of life, from all over the Seven Kingdoms. So, yeah. I mean, if it's, some of those books, like the book on the language of the children of the forest, maybe you might be able to gain some insight into where they went, or maybe history on how the wall was built, something like that. And the scrolls from old Valeria, maybe info on how to make Valerian steel, which is currently a lost art in Westeros, or maybe what was happening before the Doom of Valeria, maybe some insight into why it happened or what caused it.
So help me out on that. So the Doom of Valeria is some sort of cataclysmic sort of rupturing of the land that led to it being entirely destroyed. Is there some... I mean, from my modern eyes, I would see this as being an earthquake or something like that. Is there some reason to think that it has a more magical provenance?
I mean, it's just conjecture. Like, the maesters and stuff just conjecture about what caused it and what it is. But people still don't go near Valeria, even to this day.
Right.
So they're and those who do, like one of Tywin's younger brothers, went on an expedition to Valeria and has never come back. That's how he's been lost.
The suggestion is maybe self-inflicted and ongoing, sort of.
Maybe, yeah. Right, people steer clear of it, as far away from it as they can, basically. But one thing I thought of while I was reading this is, Sam's right. This is a treasure trove of lost info. And then I thought, Aemon's been here for 66 years, give or take. Maybe he should have been working on this before he lost his eyesight. There's not a ton of daily maester duties at the Night's Watch on your everyday basis. Maybe he should have been working on categorizing all this or something.
That is an interesting point. I think maybe there is sort of medical things that you have to attend to. I mean, if you've got, is Castle Black like 300 men?
Right now it's a 6 something. I think I have
600,
it,
right. I mean, you'd imagine
around 600-ish, yeah.
Yeah, if they're sparring with each other and ranging, there'd be quite a few medical things that you have to deal with. But you're right. I mean,
true.
This is your life. It's not like it's not like you're playing tennis on the weekends. Right. You could go through the library,
Yeah. Especially some of these things. If you don't have time to organize them and read through them all, at least try to gather up some of these ones that Sam found in one night and send them to the Citadel for further examination and
right.
study, you know?
Send copies of them, because I mean, one of the things that happens when Jon is sort of like ham-fisting around down there is he destroys one by clutching it too hard.
Yes. Very good point.
So we mentioned Sam's terrified to go on the ranging, and he thinks that the Brothers of the Night's Watch shouldn't be scared, but Jon corrects him on that. He says, no, we're all scared.
Right, Yeah, he quotes his father Ned saying that, Ned told him there is no shame in fear. What matters is how we face it, which seems like a life lesson that Sam's father Randall Tarley was neglectful in giving to his firstborn and heir.
Yes, I would say so. I think his lessons were more around the, yes, be afraid.
Right, yeah, trying to toughen him up by bullying him, thinking that would teach him, like, beat the fear out of him. Which...
Yes, or then at some point, once he decided he was going to cut his losses, to beat the fear into him.
Right, yes. Yeah, we've said before that, Sam thinks he's the only one feeling this sense of fear and doubt about things. This happened in the chapter where they found the bodies. He thinks that this makes him weak, but he just doesn't realize that everyone feels fear and doubt. It's just a matter of how you handle it.
Yeah.
And that reminds me, like, Stacy's always talking about, she always thinks she's got the worst memory. She clearly hasn't listened to this podcast. Every episode we get examples of why we know she hasn't listened to this podcast. But, she always thinks she read or hear about something and then she'll go to tell me about it later, and she's like, oh, I have the worst memory. I can't remember all the details. I'm so stupid. And I'm like, no, everyone. If I read it too, I wouldn't be able to remember the details to tell you. So it's just one of those, you think you're the only one in that situation, but really you're not.
It's a good point. So because the ranging is due, several of the other boys have gone into Mole's Town to do what they call digging for buried treasure, which, if you remember, is that the Mole's Town brothel is underground. So digging for buried treasure means visiting there. Jon and Sam were invited to go. Jon said, do what you want, I took a vow. That's the same Jon Snow who ran away last chapter, right?
Oh, that's rich, Jon. That's rich. Not only is it the same Jon that was deserting just a couple chapters ago, but he's telling this to one of the guys who went and stopped him from deserting. That's right.
Maybe Jon's trying to return the favor, like, don't do that.
Right.
You took a vow.
Now, the particular vow he's referring to is the father no children vow, which is not like 100% guaranteed they'll be violating that vow.
That's true. You'd think that the buried treasures would know how to prevent that kind of thing from happening.
Right. So, especially with all these men who have taken such a vow not that far away.
Right, exactly, yeah. I mean, neither of us want this to end in issue, yes.
Right. But Castle Black is nearly empty as they're walking to the king's tower, because there's the faction that's off in Mole's Town digging for buried treasure, and the other faction is in the Sept praying to the gods. And Jon wonders who feels better afterward, which I thought was an interesting line there.
Uh-huh.
But he also thinks that the new gods won't help beyond the wall, but that his gods, the old gods, will be there waiting for him.
Right. And of course, to a certain extent, Sam has also accepted the old gods. He took his vows in the sight of the old gods rather than the new. For basically the same thinking here. The new gods can't do anything for you north of the wall. Sam thinks they never did anything for me, so...
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Changed his allegiance.
Then so they finally make it. They're walking through these worm walks, which are tunnels that link the buildings, and it's not very, as we mentioned in the summary, it's not very necessary at the moment, but in the winter, when, as Jon says, the snowdrifts are 40 to 50 feet high, it's really the only way you can get around. But they come up out of the worm walks, and they run across new recruits that have been brought in from Conway, which is one of the wandering crows, and this is he's the third wandering crow we've heard of. The first, obviously, being Yoren, who we're very familiar with, and the second being Garen, who was the Wandering Crow who brought the recruits that forced Sir Alistair Thorne to graduate Jon and his class to make room for them.
Yeah.
And these recruits were brought in from a dungeon near Gulltown, which is on the eastern coast of the Vale.
Just a question before you go on. Who did Jon come north with? Was that Yoren?
Yeah.
Okay, Jon came north with Yoren. Jon and Tyrion.
Yeah. He was bringing up some recruits from the Vale as well. So
Right,
it must be a frequent spot. A frequent hot spot is the Vale.
It does feel like, I mean, obviously they don't get great people from these, but they do have a fairly steady supply of men.
It feels like a steady trickle.
Right.
I kind of have some concerns about this steady trickle versus what Mormont's about to do.
Well, yes. But I mean, in terms of keeping it staffed at a certain level, it feels like there's enough people coming in that the numbers aren't going down.
Yes, as long as they're maintaining, as long as they're not wiping out large sections of their population, they can keep the status quo going.
By, for instance, going on a huge ranging north of the wall.
Yes.
Okay, I see where you're headed.
Yeah.
I also wonder, just while we're talking about this, if the other castles send their own people out. I mean, we know of these Wandering Crows, but do the other castles have their own Wandering Crows? Oh, no. I think it's basically centralized because when Jon's crew graduated, some of them were sent along the wall to other castles, right?
Yeah. They were dispersed. Like, Darren was dispersed to Eastwatch to be a gourmand.
That's right. But then, that feels a little bit... It feels a little bit of a waste of time and effort because why not have at least one of your Wandering Crows based in Eastwatch, because you can sail from there.
True.
And get to other parts of the kingdom much quicker. And then perhaps you learn that sailing is an option, and so you don't always walk back.
It could be because of the what we talked about in the Arya 2 episode, which is actually the episode that I was thinking about earlier when I couldn't think of what episode was going live this week. It's Arya 2. It could be the whole, what we talked about then, about the team building exercise of trudging these folks all together.
Right, but when Yoren goes from the wall to King's Landing, he's not team building with anyone. He's just...
That's a good point.
he could catch a boat out.
He's just schlepping across the realm.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot faster, too. This trickle could be a little bit faster of a situation.
Quite. Exactly the point I'm making, yes. So anyway, you were talking about this new crew of recruits.
Yes, we've got a graybeard leaning on a staff who I wondered if maybe could be Gandalf. That would be quite the boon for the Night's Watch.
I'm going to guess no, but keep going.
No?
Keep going.
Okay. We've got a pair of blonde brothers who I think might look like twins, or at least he mentioned that they look like brothers. We've got a fancy but soiled dressed youth, what he calls a raggedy man with a clubfoot and a grinning loon who thinks himself a warrior. So it turns out, Donald Noy explains that we've got a brigand, a barber, a beggar, 2 orphan boys, and a boy prostitute. And he says, with such we defend the realm.
Well, yeah. Just about better than nothing, I guess.
Yeah, but that's where your line that you found quite humorous, or Jon says, they smell of summer.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Jon says they smell of summer. I'm like, dude, you graduated early because of time pressure 3 weeks ago, and now you're saying that the new recruits smell of summer?
Yeah, that's funny. He's like a seasoned veteran ranger at this point.
Exactly.
Not so much. And he looks at Sam. He says to Noy, he says, they'll do. And he looks at Sam with a knowing smile and says, we did.
We did.
Have you? We haven't done anything. They haven't done anything yet. You fetch Mormont's breakfast in the morning. So, but like we were just talking about, this class and the classes we've seen so far, it brings me to a concern I have about this ranging and replacing the men if a lot are lost on this ranging. Because so far we've seen Jon and his group, which by count is roughly around 9. And then Alistair Thorne mentions the class coming up behind him is 5. And now we've got Thieves 5. And likely there's been some more that we haven't heard about. And we know that Yoren's got his group, which was 30, but one is Arya, who doesn't count, and Praed has died.
Yeah, I mean, presumably at some point Arya will drop out of that group. Yeah.
Yes, you wouldn't think she's going to make it.
Join the Night's Watch.
Exactly. I don't think she can keep that ruse up quite long enough. And they've got a long way to go through a war zone, so who knows how many might drop out before they finally get to Castle Black. So it just feels like there's not enough new blood to gamble putting such a high percentage of the Night's Watch in harm's way. And just to throw a few stats at you, back in both Cat 1 and Tyrion 3, Cat 1 is the one when she and Ned are talking in the Godswood when she says Jon Arryn's died and the king's riding north. Yeah. And Tyrion 3 is the chapter when he's talking to Mormont, and Mormont's kind of asking him, hey, would you be interested in taking the Black? It's mentioned that there's less than 1,000 total men in the Night's Watch. Castle Black has roughly around 600, and they're bringing 200, 150 of which are Rangers. The Shadow Tower has 200, and they're bringing half of them, and Eastwatch by the Sea has even less than the Shadow Tower. So, we don't know how many wildlings or how organized or concentrated the wildling force is up there, but we do know that Mance Rayder, who's the king beyond the wall, is amassing all the people up there, which we got from Qhorin Halfhand, who took a wildling hostage and got that information that way. So what if there are thousands of wildlings gathered, and even if they're not as good at fighting or as well equipped, that's still a lot for 300 to possibly deal with no wall advantage, fighting in the opponent's territory. Oh, and by the way, the dead is walking up there.
Right.
So
you may have to kill them all more than once. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, because I was going to say that, 300 against a few thousand might not be that sort of one-sided, because this is a drilled fighting force. The wildlings, presumably most of their life is hunting, scavenging, that kind of thing.
Right.
They're probably tough and gritty, but they haven't fought in wars. They haven't fought in battles.
Right.
The Night's Watch recruits are trained to fight in battles, but I would think that 98% of that training would be fighting battles when you're on the wall.
Yes, right.
Not fighting battles out in the open, because you wouldn't think that would be a thing you'd have to do. So, forming a tight shield wall or things like that could come in handy probably aren't any more second nature to the Night's Watch than they would be to the wildlings.
Yes, right. And, like I said, you're on their territory. Yeah. So they probably know that land a lot better than you and can set up ambushes and stuff to reduce your numbers some.
But I would say, the one thing I would say about this is, if you sort of crest the hill and you see campfires of 10,000 wildlings, it's time to go home with that information.
Yes. Right,
Turn around.
Right. Don't take them on. Yeah. Now we know. Run away! Yeah. Mormont says, which this really freaks Sam out. He's talking about the birds. He asks Sam if he's gotten the Raven Jet, and Sam says Aemon's gonna do that after the feeding, and he says, I want strong birds, good strong birds. If we're butchered, I want my successor to know why. And I was like, man, if you guys are butchered, who's left to rebuild?
These new recruits smelling of summer are going to be awfully busy.
Yeah, seriously,
you're in charge.
So it's just a concern I have here. The whole numbers thing, like we were talking, they're bringing them in 5s and 10s, and Yoren has a big batch from King's Landing, but that's not going to replace if they lose, 300 people in a sitting. Especially considering a large portion of them are Rangers. That's the seasoned fighting force, Yeah. So anyway, the wall does help. The folks in Castle Black do still have a 700-foot wall to help keep them safe.
Right.
So,
And they may discover that was really the trump card when their friends don't come back, and they're still safe because they've still got the wall, yes.
right.
So Jon hangs out with Donal Noye for a while. If you remember, he was one of the chapters in Game of Thrones the Jon chapters in Game of Thrones all seem to be Jon saying foolish things, trying to do foolish things, and some older guy coaching him to be a bit more sensible. Well, Donal Noye was one of these characters in one of the chapters, explaining why Jon's behaviour was leading to his fellow recruits not liking him.
Yeah, he was actually bullying them when he thought they were bullying him.
Right. But that saved Jon from the gang of recruits, and they've become his friends since then, although he lords it over them when they go off to Molestown, apparently. So Jon has spent quite a bit of time helping Noye in the armory.
Yeah, he mentions I can't remember which chapter off the top of my head, but it's kind of like he's thinking through the mundane life of being a member of the Night's Watch, and he mentions that one out of every 12 tasks he gets is doing something cool, like him and Ghost going out and hunting and stuff. Otherwise, he's usually doing mundane tasks, and a lot of it is helping Donal Noye with the smithing. Yeah. So he has spent a good amount of time with him.
Yeah, and if you remember, Donal Noye was he only has one arm. He lost an arm, but he was armourer to Robert Baratheon. He made Robert's warhammer, which was the weapon that was used to kill Rhaegar Targaryen. So Donal Noye knows Robert Baratheon and his brothers Stannis and Renly. So Jon and Donal Noye have an interesting conversation about this. But they try not to probe too deep, because Donal Noye wants to talk about Robb Stark becoming king in the north, and Jon's interested in what Donal Noye knows about the three brothers, or the two remaining brothers.
Right.
But all these conversations are always a bit uneasy, because you can't afford the Night's Watch to have rivalries, internecine rivalries about previous allegiances. You need to be a unified force. But Noye's insights are pretty powerful here.
Yeah.
So Noye was smith not only to the three Baratheon brothers, but to their father before them, Steffon, who we learned about in the prologue, who died in a shipwreck. Noye says that the crown changes people, so Robb Stark will be changed by becoming king. Robert Baratheon was never the same after he put the crown on, and Crescent in the prologue had the same thoughts about Robert.
Yeah, he had similar thoughts about Robert and all three brothers. He thought that the reason he loved Stannis the most is because Stannis is the one that needed the most love, because he was the rigid, difficult one to get along with. Kind of the similar thoughts. I don't think we've mentioned it yet, but Noye says that Robert was the true steel, and that Stannis was iron. He was hard and brittle and would break before he'd bend, and that Renly was copper. Is pretty to look at, but really not worth much when you get down to it.
Yeah,
and it kind of sums up the similar thoughts that Crescent had when he was describing them in the prologue.
Yeah. There doesn't seem to be much debate on this. This is definitely how they are.
Oh yeah. But I wondered, when he says that the crown changes people and that Robert was never the same when he put the crown on. I no doubt, I absolutely 100% believe that's true. Even Crescent is seeing a difference in Stannis, since Stannis has, titled himself king. That he said, some of the words he said, that's not you. That's not how you would. That's not the Stannis that I know. But I wondered about Robert, how much of it was the crown and how much of it was losing Lyanna and then his unhappy marriage with Cersei, creating what we ended up with Robert.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely there's definitely those two things leading to it. But I think you've made this point before, that Lyanna knew that Robert was a womanizer before she knew him, and I don't think she expected to change him.
Right. Yes. That's right. When Ned was coming back from the brothel after seeing Baby Bera, he was reminiscing about all this, and his thought went to Lyanna, and a quote she had was something like, Robert would never keep to one bed. So she knew her betrothed was not going to be faithful to her. But I just wondered if he would have ended up the same drunken lazy king, or if he would just been a womanizing lazy king, and maybe not such a, uninvolved drunk in his rulings.
But maybe Lyanna's being unfair. I mean, like, the way Robert described his feelings for Lyanna, it felt like he might have set aside his womanizing ways for her.
Yeah, possibly. You're right. He was young. I mean, I think he was a teenager. Yeah. So, not to excuse his behavior as being a teenager, but he was not a full-grown man
Right. And because he married Cersei and it was loveless, he saw no reason to change his ways. If he'd married Lyanna and it had been a beautiful relationship, he might have seen the reason to change his ways,
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. It's just something I wondered about when I read that was, certainly the crown did change him, but I'm guessing his loveless marriage with Cersei didn't help make him be a fuller, better man. Yeah. Either.
Just a technical point here that Renly was only around 6 years old when Noy left Storm's End. So that's quite young to have formed this opinion of him. I mean, maybe you keep in touch, maybe you hear how things are going. And I mean, I don't know, 6-year-old boys, you can see something about their character, especially, I mean, obviously we've commented before how people grow up quicker in Game of Thrones, And now, he's from the Stormlands, he's not from the North, so he's not a man grown at 6, but I mean, I think the Baratheons are a little bit more in that direction than some of the Southern Lords.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Although, as Dr. Hondo would have surely pointed out, he wasn't even willing to be certain that Joffrey wouldn't have grown out of his issues.
Right.
And
but the thing is it an issue here? I mean, if he liked colourful clothing and sort of, frivolous things, that's his character, not an issue. You know what I mean? I think that's
right. Yeah. He could still been a perfectly well-adjusted, full-grown man who likes fun stuff, So I felt like it was a little bit premature to be saying Renly is copper and there's not much. He's pretty, but not worth much. When he last saw him, he was about 6 years old. So.
Yeah. But of course, the other thing is that Renly doesn't remember the siege of Storm's End, which is I think that's something that very much shaped Stannis' character.
Oh, yes. Renly was I'm sure he was obviously living the hardship, but he was too young to understand probably how dire the situation was.
Right. So the talk of what metal each of these brothers are makes Jon wonder what metal Robb would be. He doesn't actually ask. I mean, I guess one hopes it's something like Valyrian steel, but...
Right.
he doesn't venture a thought. So they back off the conversation now because they both don't want to talk too much about politics because obviously on some levels here Robb is in rebellion against the Baratheon brothers.
Yeah, that's what Jon figures. He figures as Noy is a Baratheon man, he probably feels Joffrey's a true king and Robb's a traitor. Yeah. But Jon would actually be surprised to learn that Robb had somewhat similar feelings about himself when he was trying to decide what to do. Now, this is pre being ordained king of the North. Mm-hmm. This was earlier in that same chapter. He was thinking that Joff is the true heir, and if they sided with Renly to get an ally, that would be treasonous. So, and he thinks if Joff were to die, which Robb intended to see that he did, the throne would go to Tommen, and if not Tommen, then Stannis, but not Renly. So he was thinking his actions were somewhat treasonous.
Yeah.
If he intended to kill the king, Yeah. So, but then the great Jon Umber decided, hey, I've got a better idea. Let's just make you king of the North. And he was like, oh yeah, forget all that stuff. Yeah. Right.
So Sam and Jon make their way up to Mormont's rooms where he's talking to Thoren Smallwood, who's acting First Ranger. Smallwood thinks that Mormont should stay in Castle Black. He has a point.
Yeah. Yep.
things could definitely go wrong, and the Night's Watch would be genuinely headless without all the people that are heading north here.
Yeah. If you're going to do this ranging, I'm kind of with Smallwood here. At least stay back in case something does go disastrously wrong. Then at least the proven leader is still in place to make the decisions.
Yeah.
He goes with them and he dies. Then everything's out the window. It's complete chaos.
Yeah. I mean, Maester Aemon would be in charge, I guess. I mean, that's the...
like temporary leader. But they would need to appoint someone at some point. Yeah. But Mormont tells Jon about how, like, in this chapter, right after he's cannot believe that Thoren Smallwood would question him leading this ranging, Mormont tells Jon about how King Maekar died in the siege. Aemon's father died while sieging a castle. And I thought, maybe, like, listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth right now. That's why lords and kings aren't supposed to go on rangings and siegings, because they could die, and that would be bad.
Yeah.
But I thought it was funny that that Thoren Smallwood said, "I'm first ranger now," with Stark and Riker both missing and dead. And it seemed like he just tried to, like, give himself a title. Like,
yeah,
I thought I should try that at work, just appoint myself a title and see if it sticks.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, Mackelly, and tell you that won't work. But knock yourself out. Yeah, just give it a try.
It reminded me of that episode in The Office when Pam decided she was going to become the office manager of the Dunder Mifflin Scranton, and so she just started calling herself the office manager and doing office managerial tasks, and eventually got the title and the promotion to office manager. I think that's what Smallwood was trying to do here.
It was a good try. But they mentioned that he's a friend of Alistair Thorne, and so no fan of Jon. So Jon won't want him to become First Ranger, that's for sure, because that's a senior person who won't be his friend. So at this point, Mormont prays that he can keep Aemon for another 20 years, but he's got to be thinking that's not going to happen. I mean, the man's 100 seriously. And blind, you know.
Is he joking? Right? Like, when he said that, and some of the other things leading, other decisions and thoughts he's had leading up to this, has me starting to worry a little bit about Mormont's leadership abilities. I mean, he has no plan in place to replace Aemon. Not even like a maester understudy in the wings. Like,
well, I mean, he's appointed Sam as his right hand, but maybe that's the problem. Maybe Sam in his room is making him think, "Oh my God, I hope Aemon lives another 20 years because this guy's useless."
Well, but Sam's not a maester. He doesn't have medical training or anything like that. Yeah. He knows, he's well read, and so, but he passes out at the sight of blood. So
right.
That's not going to go very well the next time there's a serious injury.
So then, from the Crescent chapter, we know that sometimes they send one in advance of the death of the aging maester.
Yes, that's what I was getting at.
Maybe this is coming.
Coming? This should have happened 20 years ago. This new maester should be like Prince Charles.
That's what I was going to say.
Is this guy ever going to die?
Yeah. I've been 60 years waiting for this job. I'm still sleeping in the kennels.
But then he also gave Sir Waymar Royce command of the ranging back in the prologue when Garrett and Will were both seasoned vets, which doesn't show a great deal of foresight into... maybe he just thought nothing would go wrong and that the other two would keep him in check. I don't know, but then the whole taking a third of the Night's Watch and a great deal of the fighting force north of the Wall, not knowing what he's going to be facing, but he does know that there are dead walking around north of the Wall. I'm thinking if he had been in the Godswood in that Bran chapter, he would have let Shaggy Dog sit next to Bran while the kids fought as well.
Or let Shaggy Dog join in.
Right. Just a little bit of foresight here, man. Come on.
But you know what? Maybe they're going to go north, kick posterior successfully and come back and have a nice quiet winter.
That's what I'm hoping for.
That's certainly what Mormont's hoping for. Yeah.
He just doesn't have a great deal of contingency plans laid out here.
So the rest of the chapter is the Aemon history lesson that we covered. So, sorry for the slight pre-spoiler in the Jon 8 chapter of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that was. I guess I just got a little too excited to finally talk about the revelation of who Maester Aemon is. So,
but it's fine. Just as a reminder, so he kept his maester's vow and turned down the crown. Sorry, what that was.
Do you remember in that same chapter? Aemon says to Jon that he's had his vows tested 3 times, once in his youth, once in his full manhood, and once as an old man. And we figured, based on Aemon's life, that him turning down the crown was the second test, when he was fully a man.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So he knew that if he stuck around the kingdom, having refused the throne, he would always be the old elder brother to the king, and so if anyone didn't like the king, they would rally around him and try to use him to undermine the king, which is why he went to the Night's Watch and took the black.
And you know what that is? That is some great foresight. And I'm wondering if Mormont is talking to Aemon about this ranging and about maester replacement stuff. I'm wondering what advice Aemon might be giving him, because clearly he's showing he's got some foresight. I wonder if he's saying, man, you got to get me some help. You got to contact the Citadel.
Maybe Aemon's just given up at this point. He's like, I'm 100, I don't need foresight anymore.
Right, could be. But also Jon mentions that he knows that Maester Aemon has seen more than 100 name days. And if you might be wondering, but Aemon was born in 198, and this is 298, so how could he have seen more than 100 name days? It's because we're now in 299, so if his birthday was early enough in 299, he might have had a name day, and we missed that chapter, I guess.
Okay, gotcha. You got some background?
I do. So, like I said, apologies about spoiling some of the Maester
It wasn't
Aemon
a plot
background.
Point, really.
Yes, exactly. Yes, you're right. But what I thought we'd do in this background is fill in some of the blanks that Mormont leaves in his story to Jon. So, like Mormont says, Maester Aemon's grandfather was King Daeron II, otherwise known as Daeron the Good. He was the 12th king of the 7 kingdoms. Now, we've talked about him previously on the show, because like Mormont said, he is best known for the peaceful assimilation of Dorne into the realm. Now, Mormont says that part of the agreement to bring Dorne into the realm was Daeron taking his Dornish princess wife, but actually his marriage to his Dornish wife Mariah Martell was brokered by his cousin King Baelor the Blessed, who was the 9th king, as part of a peace offering after Baelor's brother Daeron I's forceful conquering of Dorne. Daeron was killed by the Dornish while under a peace banner. Daeron II worked with his brother-in-law, or as they call him in Westeros, good brother, Meryn Martell, to bring the two sides together. Meryn Martell is the brother of Mariah Martell.
Gotcha.
Mormont also mentions that King Daeron's heir died in a tourney accident. So the uncle to Aemon and heir to Daeron II was Baelor Breakspear. He died in the tourney at Ashford Meadow, which is featured in the first Dunk and Egg book, The Hedge Knight. And Baelor fought on the side of Duncan the Tall against his brother, King Maekar, and nephew, Aerion, which is Aemon's father and brother, respectively. Now, Baelor was killed by a blow to the head by a mace from his brother, King Maekar. And after King Daeron II died, which was during the Great Spring Sickness, which ravaged King's Landing, his second son, Aerys I, not to be confused with Mad King, became king. And as Mormont said, when King Aerys I died, the crown then went to Daeron's 4th son, Maekar, which is Aemon's father.
Okay.
But what happened to the 3rd son, you might ask?
I do.
Well, the 3rd son was named Rhaegal, and he did become Prince of Dragonstone when Aerys I became king.
That's usually the position given to the heir presumptive, right?
Yes, the heir apparent usually is titled The Prince of Dragonstone.
Yeah.
But Rhaegal was thought to be meek, mad, and sickly. He had been seen dancing naked through the Red Keep, which, I'm sure a lot of people might be guilty of dancing naked around their own house. I don't know that necessarily makes you those things.
When your own house is populated by the whole kingdom, though.
Right. But Rhaegal died prior to his older brother by choking on a lamprey pie, of all things.
Mm-hmm.
And his only son, Aelor, was killed by his twin sister and sister wife, Elora.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mormont mentions that King Maekar died in battle against an outlaw lord, which we mentioned a little bit earlier. It was during the Peak Uprising. House Peak is a Dornish Marches house that had lost a lot for supporting the Blackfyres during the first 2 Blackfyre rebellions. And having risen up against the Iron Throne yet again, Maekar himself led the efforts to suppress the rebellion, and it's said that Maekar was crushed by a rock hurled from Starpike, which is the seat of House Peak, during the storming of the castle. And when Aemon, as we know, declined the throne, it passed to his younger brother Aegon, or as we affectionately know him, as Egg, earning King Aegon V the moniker Aegon the Unlikely as the 4th son of a 4th son.
There you go. Well, thank you, Mackelly. So, comparison with the television show, this scene is entirely dropped. After Jon's abortive southward escapade, Mormont announced that they were going north, and the next we saw was the Night's Watch heading out through the wall to the north. So, when the second season started, the Night's Watch is already north of the wall. So all of this is unnecessary in the TV show.
Okay.
Pedantry Corner. Just a thought here. Wouldn't the Rangers need up-to-date maps of north of the wall all the time? Like, just constantly? And wouldn't they be creating them too? I mean, wouldn't that be part of the job of ranging?
Absolutely. And I think that I had the same thought because of Mormont saying how old these maps were. And I was thinking about in the prologue how it mentioned that Will had been on hundreds of rangings. And I thought, well, why did nobody make more recent maps? And then I was thinking about the size. If you look at a map of the area north of the wall and just how vast it is, we were talking about in that prologue chapter about how they were 8 days ride out and still not that far. And if you look at a map, the wall only covers maybe half of the width of the area north of the wall because it hangs out into the yes, it widens out into the water, and the Shadow Tower is only on the eastern side of the Frostfangs. Yeah, they go way north and way west, and maybe I'm guessing they just don't get the Rangers just don't cover that much territory.
But what's the point in ranging if you? So okay, you go ranging, you're like, oh, Mance Raider's gathered a force, it's huge. Where is it? Well, it's kind of that way. You
just keep going northwest. You'll find it.
Seriously, you need maps.
You'll see a big gnarled tree. Turn left at the gnarled tree.
It just feels like, I don't know, something's not right.
Yes, I agree with you. Yep.
And the other one is Jon talking about the new recruit smelling of summer, and the we did line is the one. Like, you did nothing.
Maybe in a few years when you really proved
yourself.
Night's Watch life. Yeah. So Mormont, he's thinking about how much of a coward Sam Tarly appears. And he said he had thought about sending Sam to treat with Renly because Sam's father is, a well-respected member, well-respected lord in the Reach. And he thought, but Renly's not going to listen to a quivering coward or something like that. And he says, I'll send Arnell instead to ask for help. And Jon says, well, what are you asking Renly for? And he says he wants help with men, horses, weapons, and armor. And it just feels like that's a bit of a wasted trip because it's unlikely anyone fighting a war for the Iron Throne is going to send valuables such as horses, weapons, armor, and men to the Night's Watch. And if you were going to ask someone, I would think it would make more sense to have Jon go to Winterfell and ask Bran, because the North has a great deal of men currently in the Riverlands, so maybe there is a surplus of food and clothing at the moment. But then the issue is that the Northmen in the Riverlands should be in the North tending to their crops, especially now that winter is coming. So I thought maybe Mormont could offer to send some men to tend to the crops in exchange for some of these valuables that they're just trying to ask for.
But he can't do that because he's sending all his men north of the wall.
Yes! It might be a better use than riding beyond this huge wall, which is meant to protect you from whatever is going on north of them.
Just a thought, just to undermine your pedantry there. Maybe you ask the king who's in battle because you're hoping he'll send, at least in terms of men, he'll send his prisoners. Like, if they get into battles and they take prisoners, that's a really good way to get rid of your prisoners.
Yeah,
you don't have to feed them anymore, and you seem like you're doing a kingly thing by helping the Night's Watch. Just a thought.
It won't help with the horse's weapons and armor that he's looking for. But
no.
But you're right, the men. Hadn't thought about that.
Right, news and notes. I hope that you all enjoyed our chat with Dr. Honda. We did. We thought it was a really...
so much fun.
It was.
It was such a good time.
Yeah.
And
so I definitely recommend you have a listen to that. He had a lot of great insights into Joffrey's character.
Yes, it was really cool. Very cool. And so we had a listener create a Discord server for our for us Ghosts of Harrenhal, which it looks like it'll be a cool place for us to talk about our show. And you guys can talk about our show. We can talk about A Song of Ice and Fire, a Game of Thrones, whatever you want. You listeners can chat amongst yourself. Maybe it's a good place for us to interact and chat about topics that we find interesting and want to hear your thoughts on. So if you're interested, we will post the link. We will start posting the link in our show notes. So go join, check it out, and should be cool.
And thanks for doing that. It's made us feel very youthful to have a Discord.
Right. Yes. When he proposed the idea, Simon and I had to talk to Ethan about what exactly a Discord server was.
Let's edit that bit out. Make us sound youthful and cool.
Right.
All right. Can I read the latest?
Absolutely.
Review. So we got on Podcast Addict, we got this review. It said, best A Song of Ice and Fire podcast around. I've tried others but prefer these guys hands down. Their episodes are entertaining and have cool insights. The show gives me A Song of Ice and Fire fix while waiting on the winds of winter. The two hosts have great chemistry. Again with the chemistry.
Oh yeah.
Listening to them interact is one of my favourite parts. Oh, and I've got a news and notes here which I kind of liked. Bella Ramsay, who is an actress. She plays a character that hasn't yet come up in the books, but I'm going to mention this character. She's just a character, don't worry. She plays Lyanna Mormont, who is Lord Commander Mormont's niece. So she's going to play Ellie in The Last of Us. HBO is making The Last of Us, which is a video game, which I do know. I am youthful in some ways, and I played this video game. And the other character in The Last of Us is a guy called Joel, and that's going to be played by Pedro Pascal, who plays another character that hasn't yet come up in the books, but Oberyn Martell, who's the younger brother of the Prince of Dawn.
Wow.
Both Game of Thrones alumni will be The Last of Us.
And very cool Game of Thrones ties there.
Yeah. And you know this because you've watched the show, but apologies to anyone who hasn't watched the show. Bella Ramsay is a child, and she stole every single scene she was in from the moment she joined the TV show. She was great. Absolutely outstanding. So I'm really glad that she's going to do that. It makes me want to watch The Last of Us when it comes to TV.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that should be pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, let's conclude. So Sam apparently likes books.
Yeah. And the Night's Watch apparently has quite the amazing collection of works.
If you can just survive this ill-advised ranging north of the wall, things are looking up for Sam.
Yeah.
We didn't mention this actually, but Jon's hand is healing. We have to keep an eye on that because he did burn his hand pretty badly when he was fighting the undead. But they check on it in this episode, and he's doing exercises to keep it supple.
Yeah, which is good. They also mentioned the hand that Sir Alistair Thorne. We didn't mention that.
That he's taken.
He's taking Other's hand, who after he turned into a white, he's taking it to Joffrey to hopefully be like, see what we're dealing with here? We need help.
You know what? It might work. I think Joffrey might go, oh, God, this is real. I need to send some troops to the wall. But one thing I know for sure is Joffrey Baratheon is keeping that hand.
Oh, yes. He's going to scare the daylights out of Sansa with it.
Tyrion, you have been displaced. I have a new Hand of the King.
Oh, the Hand of the King jokes that he's going to come up with this hand.
Exactly. Mormont is clearly not thrilled by the quality of his lieutenants. Sorry.
Or lieutenants.
No, lieutenants, yeah. They are clearly not up to snuff. But then again, they are advising him not to do this ill-advised trip to the north. So they may be the ones who've got the... I'm not sure I trust my Lord Commander anymore.
Yes. And when Thoren Smallwood refers to himself as First Ranger, after he leaves, Mormont says, First Ranger. And he points to Sam and said, rather point you, First Ranger. So
that's as low as it goes.
He's not all that thrilled with Smallwood, apparently.
No. Sam has got to learn to gird his loins. I mean, sure, he's a nervous character, but when Mormont talks to you, you talk back. Don't sit there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're never going to impress him as the replacement for Maester Aemon if you can't speak to him.
That's for sure. He stands there with his mouth agape, and Mormont tells a story about how his mother told him, when you stand around like that, a weasel's going to crawl into your mouth and make a home. So, yeah. We get some...
That sounds like they breed them tough on Bear Island right there. By the way.
I guess so. Yeah, at least it wasn't a bear that was going to crawl into his mouth. And we get some more cool information about Maester Aemon's life and history, and more Targaryen history. So that was cool in this chapter. But then we just get back to Mormont taking a huge gamble by leading such a high percentage of the Night's Watch out on this ranging. And you just got to wonder if the benefits outweigh the risks.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, they could find Benjen. They could find Benjen and be like, hey, this was successful. We didn't lose any men, and we found Benjen Stark. Or we could discover why he and Sir Waymar are missing. But they could also do that and still lose a third of the already dwindling Night's Watch when winter is coming and they know dead are walking.
Benjen could arrive back at the wall the day after this force goes north by himself.
Right.
You know.
Yes.
There's no way to know. So Jon is obviously affected by Robb's elevation to being king, but it feels like his vow-breaking phase is over. And this was a whole chapter where Jon didn't do anything stupid, so that was impressive. He was a little rich with the "they smell of summer," but nothing overtly stupid.
He's still a teenage boy, you know.
Yeah. As ever, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at ghostsharrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and now on Discord.
That's right. And if you wouldn't mind going out and leaving us a 5-star rate and/or a fantastic review, we certainly would appreciate that. And hey, we might read your review.
And read it out. Yes, exactly. All right. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.